Hey guys, another video for our how to do stuff in Japan playlist, and as is often the case on those videos, it's just more of a information heads up type video, and it's in response to a message I received from a fairly stressed out one of our patrons. He's actually in a relationship with a Japanese lady and he's having some issues at the moment, and he was a bit stressed out about it and he sort of wanted an opinion on it. So pretty hard, it's a pretty huge topic, so it sort of deserves its own video. We've sort of talked about this before on other videos over the years. There's one video that's had a couple of million views from years ago on sex in Japan, and it's sort of the same topic really, but just perhaps a little bit more specific for our friend's case. So, get to the point. No doubt, well, I can tell you for a fact, there are some people in Japan who have very active sex lives, or active sex lives on a sliding scale of occasionally active to full-on active. Obviously there's you can't generalize and say everybody's the same. So I can tell you for a fact there are some people in Japan who have active sex lives, no doubt about it. However, the statistics and the anecdotal evidence show that the average person in Japan doesn't. And over the years we've seen lots of examples of this. Years ago, one of the condom companies did a worldwide survey of how often people have sex. Obviously condom companies are very interested in such statistics, so they did a big survey, worldwide survey, and they released their findings. And we've seen a few of these over the years, different surveys done by different groups on how often people have sex in different countries and in different age groups in different countries, and always Japan goes really down on the list, right? And it's partly a cultural thing. There's lots of reasons for it. It's just seen really differently here, it really is. It doesn't figure in day-to-day life. I mean, the way, in some of the cultures that some of us come from, sex is a big thing. It's used in our entertainment, in our movies, and in our music clips, and in our lives. Sex plays a big part in advertising, and the sex images and the sex thinking is a huge part of day-to-day life in a lot of the cultures that we come from, but in Japan it's just not. It's just not. It's kawaii and kakoi, but it's all really just superficial imagery, and it's not sexualized in most cases. It's just not. It just doesn't play a big part in Japanese culture or Japanese thinking. And then when there is sexual issues or sexual imagery or whatever, usually it's twisted, right? And again, generalizations, but it's just true. It's just true that when you do come across sexual references, or check into a hotel in Japan and flick through the channels on the remote control, and quite often the porn channels will come up with they give you like 10-15 seconds of like intro to try and hook you in so that you'll pay money to watch the pornography, and it's pretty depressing stuff. It's like, oh yada, it's the women not wanting, it's sort of like rape scene sort of stuff basically. The girls going no no no, and the old half-bald old man's going or two or three half-bald old men are going over the young girl who's going no no no, and so when you do come across sexual imagery in Japan, it's like that, which means that the image is, and the way it's seen is, that guys who are into sex are ecchi, which means sleazy, right? And so good guys and nice guys and popular guys have a very clean, non-sexual, non-threatening sort of image, right? And so that's what a nice boy and a popular boy is going to look like. And they're boys, even if they're 30 years old, they look like pretty boys, and they're just not sexual. They're not, usually, this is the case. And girls are considered to be sort of like a very virgin type image, and they're supposed to be not into it either. So the culture sort of presents good people and cute girls and cool boys as not being into sex. right? And those people who are into sex are considered sort of sleazy. And again, all generalization, but those of you who live in Japan, including our friend who actually triggered this video, you've seen this imagery yourself all the time, right? And it's just the way it is. You know, I just got a flash in my head then. Even on mainstream TV, you'll see things like young girls being pursued by these old guys, ha 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 ha, in sort of a joking way, but it's got that undertone of etchiness, of sleaziness. And, you know, he's being a sleaze and she's being a good girl and running away, and it's just twisted, right? Which means the end result of everything I've just talked about is that the dudes just aren't into it, that normal dudes just aren't usually into it, and normal girls just aren't into it. And the statistics prove this out. I mean, you can find it yourself. If you look online for the statistics on this, you'll find it. There's been lots of surveys over the years. You know, the frequency, sex frequency by country, or search something like that on Google, you're bound to get lots of results. And you'll see exactly what I'm talking about, you know. The under 20s, people under 20 in Japan, majority of them have never had sex. And if you look at the other surveys on this, you'll find that they're not interested in it. You know, I heard a young guy recently, I was at an event and there was a few people talking and there was a young guy there, and one of the older ladies said to him, "When are you going to get a girlfriend?" And he said the Japanese word that sort of means bothersome or tiresome or a hassle sort of thing is what he said. And that's the way they see it. You know, the young dudes just aren't interested in chasing girls, most of them, and the girls aren't really interested either, you know, and it's just what it is. And then when they do have relationships, they tend to not be in it. And again, you can look at the statistics and see this, that even when they do have boyfriends and girlfriends, usually they're not into it. And I mean, there's exceptions. I mean, love hotels. We've showed you love hotels ages ago on a video. We showed you what a love hotel is, which is a distinctly Japanese thing. So those of you who are sleazy and etchy and want to go and have sex can go and check into one of these hotels that you pay by the minute, and you go in and it's all very secretive and no one can see. And again, this is the way the Japanese see sex, right? They've got to hide. They have special pop-up things that hide the registration number of your car, so no one can see the registration number of your car, and you secretly check into this place and through a back entrance and nobody can see you, and you go in there and you spend some time in there, and then you secretly leave and nobody knows you did it, right? So again, it shows that sort of secretive, sleazy, it's a naughty thing type approach to sex, right? So, and again, it's just a cultural thing. As with all these videos, I don't want this to sound judgmental. It's hard. Sometimes it's hard not to sound judgmental when you're talking about some of these topics. You know, I mean, some of us come from cultures where a healthy sex life is considered to be a healthy part of the human condition, right? So when you're talking about something like this, that's sort of like, you know, old style, 80 years ago type thinking in some countries, sometimes it is a bit hard to be non-judgmental about it, but it's a cultural thing, and they're happy. And this is the point for my friend at Patreon that sent that message. He's really worried because, and I'll tell you this because you don't know who he is, right? But it might help someone else too. He's worried because when he first got with his girlfriend, they had a bit of a sex life happening, but it slowly stopped. It slowly deteriorated and it stopped, right? And he's worried that she might be shagging someone else, right? And he asked me, do you think she's shagging someone else? And my answer is really not likely. Really not likely. It's more likely it's not that she's not into you. Now this is, again, it's generalizations, can't be sure, but I'll take a big bet on it that it's not that she's not into you, it's just that she's not into it. And the way they see it is, that's not a problem. You know, some of us come from, and I saw on Japanese TV recently, most Japanese TV's crap, but recently someone in our house was watching one of those evening fucking everyone talking nonsense shows, and the word plutonic came up, right? Plutoniku, but the katakana pronunciation, and it caught my attention, and I listened, and they were talking about platonic relationships, and for them, it's really normal. You know, in some of the cultures that we come from, if your romance, if your relationship or your marriage, and this is sort of aimed for people who are married too, if your marriage becomes sexless and your relationship becomes platonic, in a lot of our cultures, a lot of our thinking is that the marriage is on its way out. You know, that oh, okay, you know, we've lost interest in each other, and probably end up, and that's why our friend probably thinks his girlfriend's fooling around, is because she's not shagging him, so he thinks maybe she's shagging someone else. But probably not. I mean, in a lot of other cultures, that's what we think, you know, but in this case, I wouldn't think so, because for them, sexless relationships is normal, you know, in their lives, and it's the same with the people around us, our friends and family, our Japanese friends and family, you know, most of them, you know, a whole heap of examples, you know, you get the young people who have relationships, and you know, they're busy at university or they're busy at work, and they get together once or twice a week, and they go off and watch a movie, or they go off and go to some place, go to a restaurant or something, and then go home to their respective homes. And a lot of the people before they get married, even if they're 30 years old, they still live at home with their parents, right? So it's quite normal for them to go out to dinner and go somewhere else, and then at the end of it, you know, see you later, and they both go home to their homes with their parents, and they might be 30 years old, and that's still considered normal, you know. So that's really, really normal. And then for them, and then in marriages, you know, it's really common, and we've talked about this before too. It's really common for kids to sleep with their parents, right? And we know lots of examples of that, where the kids will sleep between the parents on their futon or on their bed. And I mean, sometimes with babies, you know, we actually did that too when we had small babies, because it's sort of very convenient, you know, and that's quite normal here too. But, you know, whereas we get to the point where, okay, 1 year old and now they're sleeping in their own room. Whereas here, we know kids that are 8, 9 years old who still sleep with their parents. You know, we've actually had some examples where they'll get these sort of, they'll have like a 2-bedroom house maybe, and they'll have mother sleeps in one room with one kid, and father sleeps in the other room with the other kid. And we know one family where the girl was sleeping in the same room as her father, and she was 13 years old. And it's just sort of, they see it as a logistical thing, really. You know, we know another couple where they have 2 boys, and the mother sleeps in one room with one of the boys, and the father sleeps in the other room with the other boy, and they're about 8 or 10 years old or something like that, the 2 kids, you know. And they just see that as normal. Now, if you're living in an environment like that, you know, there's not a lot of exciting romantic stuff going on in that environment. And I mean, there can be, you know, of course, that people could find ways if they want to, but usually they don't. They just don't think about it. It's just, no, meiwaku, and it's just a hassle, is the way that most of them see it. You know, I've got so many examples flooding in. I mean, there's that logistical thing about, you know, it just doesn't come up. It just doesn't become an issue, because when you're sleeping in the same room as your children, it's just, you know, it kills the romance, doesn't it? But they don't see that as being an issue. That's just the way it is, you know, and it's just seen differently. It just is really seen differently. It's not seen in some of our cultures. Healthy sex life is considered to be an important part of a relationship, you know, of a close relationship. And in Japan, it's just not. It's just not, you know. Interesting, though, using the word platonic, because a lot of the relationships are like that, and we know some husbands and wives here who have pretty good relationships, but they are just like buddies. There's no holding hands, there's no kissing, there's no sex, right? But they're happy, and this is the big point to our friend. She's probably happy. If you look at your relationship, don't think about the sex part of the relationship. Just look at the rest of your relationship. If other than the fact that you know, you're feeling that's missing, ignore that for a second. You know, is she happy? Is she happy? Because usually that's the case. They don't think it's important to be shagging each other, and so she might be quite happy, and she might be quite happy just for the relationship to be like that. So it's a cultural thing, you know. I mean, sometimes these things do come down to individuals, and of course, because in the end we're all individuals, aren't we? So, but you always have to, when you have a relationship with a Japanese person, you always have to keep this cultural thing in mind. Is it is it normal for them? So for our friend, he feels like he's being rejected by her because she's not into it with him. But it's not really that she's not into him, it's just that she's not into it, you know? And most likely, this is I can bet you 99.9%. And again, look at the statistics. Chances are this is right. If you look at the statistics, they're not into it. They're just not into it. You know, the numbers, I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but, you know, there's a huge percentage of married people in Japan just never have sex. Never. And there's others that have it maybe once in 3 months, or, you know, once a month, or, you know, it's huge. Have a look at the statistics for yourself. It's just normal. The norm is nothing going on, right? So for the person who's not Japanese, we might consider that means our relationship's on the way out. But to the Japanese person, it's just normal. You know, oh no, oh, he's great. I love him, you know. Oh yeah, I'll marry him. Yeah, great, I'll marry him. It's just the way it is. So anyway, hopefully that helped our friend. It's just a case-by-case thing. It is hard. Stuff like this is really difficult. Even if you know these things on a intellectual level, and things like this are the hardest. You know, even if you know on an intellectual level, this is probably normal, you know. And even if you know these things on an intellectual level, it's the feeling, you know. And we've talked about this before in other videos like similar to this, is, you know, there's a big difference between understanding something intellectually and how it makes you feel, you know, how it makes you feel. So, one important thing, I don't know if it's important. A lot of this stuff, you just have to try and understand it and just deal with it. And a lot of this stuff, it's probably not important to talk about it. I mean, again, here's another cultural difference. In a lot of our cultures, we've come to see, or we've come to believe, that talking about topics like this between with our partners is an important thing in a relationship, you know, to help keep a healthy relationship. For Japanese people, often they don't think talking about these things is important. So it really depends, and here's where it comes down to individuals. It depends on the relationship you have with your partner, you know, whether you can talk about these things or not. Some of us feel it can help if you have a partner that will talk about these things, but they're not used to it. And this is what we have to remember in all our relationships with Japanese people, whether it be romance or whether it just be somebody who's just a friend or whatever it is. We have to remember that where we come from, if we're not Japanese, our experience of life and what we consider normal and where we come from, and what, you know, what we think is normal and what they think is normal, is often two really different things. And it's the same way it's really hard for us to get our head around their thinking, you know, and really understand it and accept it, that, you know, no, she really is into me, but she's just not into sex, or whatever it is, you know. She's telling her friends I'm not cool, you know. What's that about? Some of you might remember we talked about that. That's just sort of like Japanese modesty, is telling your friends that your boyfriend's not cool or your hubby's not cool. And it's hard for us to get our head around that, you know, when you hear that for the first time. But we just have to accept these guys are coming at it from a different point of view. So we have to try and put ourselves, you know, step outside our own relationship and just look at the cultural points objectively and try and see it from their point of view. You know, because from our point of view, she says, oh, I don't want to have sex with you, right? And you say, what do you mean, today? Or you mean, oh no, I don't care if we never have sex, right? And for some of us, that'd be like, whoa, she's not into me, you know? But we have to step outside our own feelings in our own relationship and just look at the culture. Look at the culture. Look at her life. Look at her life. Her parents lived in separate bedrooms, quite common here. Quite common for parents to live in separate bedrooms. Her friends, and this is the other thing, their friends and their families and everybody they know, this is normal. You know, their friends and family and everybody they know say their husband's not cool, right? It's normal here. It's just part of the modesty thing. Their friends and family and everyone they know never talk about sex, and as far as they know are not into it at all. And that's another thing. In Western countries, it's a common topic. You get a couple of girls together, or three ladies together, talking about close friends, talking about something, soon they might end up talking about that. Guys, certainly, right? And we consider that healthy, don't we? We sit around and talk about our, you know, with people we're close to. Sometimes we'll talk about relationships and talk about these things, and sometimes just generally. Oh yes, it's important in relationships to have a good sex life. We'll talk about on TV. They'll talk about that. And see, this is the other thing. Friends, family, television, everything in their life and in their culture tells them that having a relationship that doesn't have sex in it is normal, right? And because you watch the crap on Japanese TV, and all these things are just constantly reinforced. They're the behaviour indirectly. They're not sitting around talking about it openly, but just when you watch the behaviour and you watch, you know, how they react to things, and all their thinking and all their cultural stuff is just constantly reinforced as being normal. So for them it is. For them it is. So for her, I would say to our friend, to her, there's a good chance that she sees nothing wrong at all. That she probably, you know, that if you ignore this topic for a moment and look at the rest of your relationship, if she's happy in the rest of her relationship, that's probably all she wants. It's a tough one. It is a tough one. You know, because for some of us it's a really important part of our relationship, you know, but you just got to accept that, you know, if you're going to be in a relationship with a Japanese person, male or female, that this could be the case. Really likely it will be. Statistically it's really likely, you know. So anyway, hopefully that helped our friend, and hopefully maybe someone else out there, this might be of help to them too. Anyway, there it was. More videos coming soon.